Hello, my name is Grant McLachlan, and I'm the author of Sparrow, A Chronicle of Defiance, which chronicles the defiance of Sparrow Force during the Second World War. Now, I've been asked during these holidays, here I am in Carwell Bay in beautiful New Zealand, I've been asked by many about of my friends and researchers and historians throughout the world what I think of Laura Hillenbrand's book, Unbroken. Now, I've been fortunate to have read Louis Zamperini's autobiography with David Renson, and then Laura's book, Unbroken. And I give you some background about me. I travelled around the world between 2003 and 2008, interviewing the remaining members of Sparrow Force and former prisoners of war in Japan, and I even interviewed the guards at several of the POW camps in Japan. Now, when I interviewed Raymond Kirch, who was a POW in Matsushiro. Now, Raymond, he was a regular Army Air Force chap. He was ground crew. He was captured in Bataan, and on the last day, he introduced me to a friend of his, Major D'Amore. Now, D'Amore was a Army Air Force doctor and surgeon, and he was captured on Bataan, and he was a doctor who helped treat people, survivors of the Bataan Death March, and he went over to Japan where he was held at Omori camp, which was the headquarter camp in Tokyo Bay, which was the same POW camp that Louis Zamperini was held. Now, every veteran that I interviewed all agreed that the heroes of the war were in fact the doctors at the POW camps, because they were officers and they had the responsibility of treating prisoners of war. Now, they took extraordinary steps to obtain medical treatment and supplies and so forth, and they stuck their neck out and stood up to the Japanese guards and common commanders to get improved conditions for the POWs. Now, Omori was the doctor, and he was regularly beaten and picked on. He was singled out. He was the chap who received the most beatings by Matsushiro Watanabe, the bird, and obviously the bird was the bad guy, the sadistic guard that Louis Zamperini seems to think was picked on him the most. But if you look through the 9 pages of lists of all the charges and specifications which were going to be laid against Matsushiro Watanabe, there's only one paragraph about a single beating that Zamperini received, and there was two or three paragraphs involving Dr. D'Amore. Now, D'Amore, after the war, he didn't go around and go on speaking tours. He didn't go on TV. He didn't try to bring publicity to himself. He just went about going back to being what he was before the war, and that was being an army doctor. So I thought, well, if you want an alternative view about what life was like at Omori POW camp, here's my interview with him. Now, this is the second interview I had with him. The first one was basically a casual conversation. I realised after the first one I have to interview this chap. So this is the second uncut interview, and after that I rang him up regularly and got him to confirm things and so forth. But here it is. Enjoy. This is my Christmas present to everyone. Happy Christmas and New Year and I hope everyone the best for 2015. Here we go. This is my interview with Major Adanto D'Amore. Thank you. Bye. You actually mentioned what it was like on Bataan. What were the Japanese like? Okay, so start. When did you know that you'd surrendered on Bataan?
Of course, the surrendering was an automatic deal by the headquarters. The big advantage in any war, or the big thing that I noticed the most, is that if you're dealing with the combat troops, you have no problems. It's a matter of survival. In other words, I respect you and you respect me, but I'm going to get you before you get me. But so the actual combat fight and surrender is one thing. The problem lies usually in the reservists. The fellow that wasn't doing the fighting comes in then to control you and move you, incarcerate you, whatever the case may be. Now comes the problem of the little guy who doesn't have the combat feelings and knowledge, who now acts superior. He's got you, see. And so this is the fellow you have to worry about, and it's the same thing today, just like in Iraq and so forth. It's the guy that is hidden and with his dope and trying to pick up people that is strong, and he's threatening, and he wants the whole war to be eliminated and get out of town because he's got one individual under, and he's threatening the whole thing. So the combat soldier is not the problem. The problem is the boy that does the incarceration. It takes you to the, shall we say, like there in the walking towards the camp instead of going by other means to be comfortable. Who then en route acts superior, and as I said, doesn't hesitate to shoot you, beat you, or anything.
Okay. So you were on the death march.
The what?
You were on the death march.
Yes, for a short period.
What did you see during the death march?
Did I what?
What did you see during the death march?
It's just like I said, here you got a group of people who were not fighting, and who had not been in the forefront of the war to take over who are now marching a group that has been downtrodden and beaten towards a camp or whatever they're going. And they act as if they're the conquerors, not the combat troops. So your problem was with the jailers, so to speak. And then they had, for instance, with a Red Cross sign, and they had a problem, you know, and mostly, as you indicated, we said, where the Japanese beat each other, they try to break their eardrums. Well, this is one of the things that helped me in this march, is the fact that I'm a medic, and they've got a running ear, and they're trying to find a means of getting it clean. So in a way, I was fortunate that I wasn't as roughly treated as the mass of troops.
So the Japanese tried to use you to treat their ears.
That's right.
Okay.
So basically, in a way, I was favored, if you want to look at it that way. I wasn't abused.
But you're also treating all the other Americans and Filipinos on the death march as well.
Yeah.
Were you set up at a point along the march, or were you following them along?
That's right.
Okay.
So I was in a more favored location, so to speak.
So, what were the conditions of the men like?
Well, you've seen pictures of it, and as a doctor, to me, it's malnutrition. And the people that are haven't eaten for, shall we say, months, and under duress, and the lack of reasonable water and fluids and so forth, they're just hanging. Basically, what you got is skeleton-type individual. Some a little bit better than others.
So the real reason for the march was so the Japanese could be brutal rather than...
I think they were in a hurry to get out of the Bataan.
Okay.
The idea is to move the troops out of there
as
fast as they can, and they didn't know where they were really going, except to some distant Filipino, shall we say, prisoner camp, or their where they put the jailed people, as you know, in those rice paddies.
Yeah. What was your impression when you first saw the Japanese? What was your impression when you first saw the Japanese?
Well, as I say, I try to have no opinion of them, but to me, well, it's just like their cars or anything else. As I say, they've been favored too much.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, did you notice anything particular about their habits or customs or culture?
Well, as I say, I didn't get into that, being a worker, so to speak, where I took care of people more than anything else, and didn't try to develop any any likes or dislikes. The idea was to survive, and as you know, the best way to survive is to ignore anything that could cause stress.
Okay. So did you see any atrocities on the death march?
They what?
Atrocities. Did you see any atrocities on the death march?
I
Did you see any Japanese atrocities on the death march? Did you see?
basically none of that spearing or destroying in the particular group I was with.
Mm-hmm.
No, it was a matter of very uncomfortable conditions of heat and sweating and move on, you know, thing that it's pretty hard to understand that type of stress without realizing that any minute it's your last.
Yeah.
And so the idea is to keep moving and to cause no irritabilities that would point any action towards you. And the ones that, you know, try to pull out or try to get food or try to get water at their convenience would automatically get severe punishment, which was very disgusting to have people treat you that way.
Mm-hmm. So, did you go to Camp O'Donnell first?
Yeah.
And how did you get there? How did you get to Camp O'Donnell?
Basically, locomotion.
Okay. Were you in the cattle truck?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was just another member of a group of a section.
And you would have been
And
treated.
the way that we were being medical, that wasn't too bad a group, right, where we happened to be.
Mm-hmm. So you went to Camp O'Donnell. How long were you there for?
As I say, within a year we were in camp in Davao.
Okay.
We moved on like he went north,
Mm-hmm.
and a group of us went to Davao Penal Colony
Mm-hmm.
and set up there, and there I practiced while they went out to work in this great big plantation.
Mm-hmm. You told me a story about these 9 men who escaped, and you gave them quinine.
The what?
You told me about these 9 men who escaped.
Oh, one of the real aggressive Captain Air Force, Dias, was in this group with Grasho and a number of other Navy and so forth, who were on active work details. And during their work details, they made contacts with some of the local Filipinos that would sneak in up close to their work and pass information. And they determined a way of getting out of camp and where to go. And they were very competent soldiers. And like everything else, they needed some aspirin and some quinine and so forth for the trip, and some sulfa. And I provided that. And of course, as we were told in camp, anybody that would be gone, everybody that in the group of 10 that lived near them or worked with them or contributed to their would also be treated very roughly. But fortunately, they made a successful escape, and as you know, Dias and company were the first ones to really give the information back to the States of what was done in the Bataan.
Do you know how they got back? How they were rescued? How did they get off the Philippines?
I don't know much about it except hearing it where they made the contacts with, and like everything else, and met some of those that are already out with the radios, and they'd gotten contact with the MacArthur and Company, the shall we say, with the radio got picked up with by submarines.
But you also said that you were the last ship to arrive safely in Japan.
Oh, like everything else, the war went unfavorably to the Japanese. And then they moved us out of Davao back to Cabanatuan through Bilibid. And we were there, I was there 3 to 4 months. And they were sending out everybody that was eligible that they didn't find any amoeba in their stool to Japan. And I was, shall we say, put on the movement roll in August of 44. So in August 44, I went through Bilibid and then to the boats, one of those Maru, and there was 1,100 of us in the forward hold of one, and you went into it and just went around the inside of the 6,000-ton forward hold, and sat down on top of each other, so to speak. And then we took off, and in a group of convoy, about 5 or 6 freighters and a couple of destroyers, apparently, from those that could see about going up to the top of the decks to do their duty, and we had to. We would hear the tin cans being dumped, as if they were being attacked.
Oh, the depth charges.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And by tin cans, I mean they were dropping the destroyers were dropping their anti-sub explosives, and we made it to Formosa, and then there we were in the hold of the ship for 2 days until we went back up to Japan and into the inland sea, and then by railroad to, and I was on the last detail, and I got off at Omori.
And you were the doctor in the hold of the ship. Was there, what sort of illnesses were there?
You were just a vertical member of this hold. There's no medical treatment, no nothing. The only thing you were able to do, you hope, is to get some food when it came down the front, and they would fill it and send it back to you. Or when you needed to go to the toilet, you went to the central bucket and walking over people to go there. You were 1,100. I mean, it was just, there was no room to do anything but sweat.
Were there many deaths from disease on that ship?
The what?
Were there many deaths from disease on that ship? Was there many deaths from disease on that ship?
Dicks?
Death. Did people die from disease?
Oh yes, there was.
Yeah.
Oh, I get that wrong. We had about a dozen pass out.
Okay. Yeah.
Because by that time you had a steady group of bodies, but dehydrated and everything. In that 10-day movement, the dehydration was out of this world. That was the biggest problem.
Okay. So you took the train all the way to Omori camp. How did you get to Omori camp?
I was on the railroad from the inland sea. We got on this railroad, and with the blinds down and everything, and they headed for Tokyo, and they would stop every so long and let out 150 of the members of this movement, and I ended up with the last 4 or 5 at Omori, the headquarters camp.
Okay.
And there I met my first acquaintance being counted, and what little pieces of paper and mess kit I had, and was looked at it in detail by Watanabe, as you know, the famous.
The bird.
And he didn't like the little write-up I had that I didn't know, and I remember that I had, and he strafed me right there. And of course, from then on, they were losing every time they lose another island on the way north. He'd take me into the woodshed and, shall we say, beat at me until he got tired. And of course, I seldom would fall. and he didn't like that.
You also said that he did other sorts of punishments to you. There were other types of punishments he would use. He would dip you in stuff and so forth. What else did Watanabe do to you?
Primarily verbal abuse and of course the beating at you in private.
Yeah.
Otherwise, my job was to, as you say, is to clean up the toilet area, fill up and go put the residue on the plantation with its radishes and so forth.
Did he single you out, or did he also beat other prisoners? Did he also beat up other prisoners at the camp?
The
Watanabe.
Watanabe, always like everything else in all work detail, there's always 2 or 3 that had a little bellyache, a little diarrhea, or a strain, and you need to have one of those as a member of the party of 2 to carry this bucket with the cleaning with the facilities from the latrines.
Okay. You said that there was a cross-section of prisoners of war in that camp.
This Omori, or Omori as they would say, was on the back side of the headquarters of the commanders of all the Japanese prison camps in Japan, and the camp itself was run by a captain and a lieutenant Japanese and Corporal Watanabe, and the members were just about every nationality, mostly the officers of the British, Canadian, Australians, Africans, and the Scotch, the Italians, and there were ship captains and officers. And like a Canadian captain that was shot down on the Ceylon at the beginning of the war in his PBY boat were members. And as I say, they did not go on a work detail. The majority of the members were from the British soldiers in Hong Kong. And they were the Cockneys, or whatever they called. At least that's what they were. And they were the sturdy, really take no noise from the Japanese. They would be as irritable as you could imagine to them, and they would move into the camp with they worked at the railheads, where they moved the food from one radio station to as you know, in Europe, all the stations end up in the middle; they don't go through. And so they would move the food and other stuff, and they would, of course, would bootleg the rice and other, shall we say, usually dry food that they could get, including even, as I said, some codfish. They could sneak it through the Japanese guards by putting it in their shoes and under their caps. And they used every system that you could think of to bring it into camp, to increase the food, which they would then provide for everybody.
You also said something about the Australians.
The what?
The Australians.
They were pretty tough. The Australians and the South Afrikaners, we're talking about the, I guess, Dutch or British. They were very tough and very competent officers. They although, as I say, the officers didn't do much work in this camp.
You also said you were moved to another camp. You were moved to another camp.
The while there, we the American B-29s kind of burned the town up, and so they moved us inland to the edge of Mount Fuji at the tree line, and there was a camp with really the same as the American pioneer forts, with the pine trees along the edge of it, and the wooden barracks, just open barracks, and in the middle of the compound was a hole in. This was on a slant. Was a hole into the mountain, and all we could imagine that's in case they ever invaded, they would have us go in there and throw in the oil and burn it.
But you also, what was it like when the bombers razed Tokyo? Remember that day?
Of course, everybody was. What happened is that the interpreter says that the emperor was going to talk to the troops and to the nation, and this was in August, as you know, and they have the August. There's usually every August is their big vacation. It's their autumn festival and so forth. Well, so that everybody, of course, there was no work that day or two, and all of a sudden we hear that the emperor had decided that he would be generous and not destroy any of the troops and discontinue the war. He had basically won the war, and that we didn't go back to work. And all of a sudden, as you know, we saw a B-29 fly overhead, wiggle its wings, and on top of the camp highest building had a PW painted on, so they could be identified. And of course they dropped a number of beautiful packages of food, clothing, and it was, shall we say, it was very happy. No more work, and all of a sudden we got movement orders to go back to Tokyo.
Yeah. So how did you celebrate the end of the war?
Well, as I say, I was fortunate that on the way out of there, I was picked up by the Air Force Medical Service. The major that I had worked with at the School of Aviation Medicine was a deputy surgeon as a 2-star general, and he was a surgeon right then for Doolittle in Okinawa. So he took me off the airplane in Okinawa, and I slept in Doolittle's hospital bed for the first time in, shall we say, in 4 years, 3.5 years, I should say. It's something comfortable, and it was on top of a hill, and you could see the air base and the ocean. So as I say, so I had a steak dinner and a real bed, and from there I flew on into Manila, and we were cataloged, you know, re-X-rayed, all new clothes, and bathed well, you know, a couple of times, and then came back to the States.
On a ship?
Yes, sir.
Remember the name of the ship?
Very nice, and
yeah.
As I say, I was promoted to major and all work, so that was big stuff then, of course. Where if I'd have remained, it'd have been a lot different.
Yeah.
You see, all my friends were in the hierarchy by that time.
But you said to me before, what type of person survived the war?
As I say, my outfit was a B-17E, which was a turret gun in the rear. But the the flying home, and the in between was the C-54s, you know, the regular. And that was the biggest airplane then, you know, commercial available. And of course I came back to the States and went on 3 weeks, what they call R&R, rest and recuperation, and went down to Miami and saw the sights again. Then went back to work I went back to Brooke General Hospital for retraining in surgery.
So I was wondering, the treatment of the Japanese was quite brutal, and the conditions were very harsh. What do you attribute your survival down to, and the survival of the other men that you were interned with? What did it take to survive?
I don't wouldn't hazard a guess.
Yeah, you said that the educated people didn't survive.
The what?
You said the educated people did not survive, but the tough people did.
Well, as I mentioned, that the survival of the fit, the old law of survival of fit, goes back to the basic of the individual that is the hardiest of the member. In other words, the more social, the more higher the, shall we say, the intellectual and the not accustomed to a good plain living that the average families would have from across the railroad tracks, as we would say, and the one with the fine sensibilities usually also was a smoker in those days, and they would give everything up for cigarettes, and as I say, I would never trade my cigarette. You only got 5 a week or something, but those that were ahead of the game, you could always trade with, and without feeling guilty that you were taking food from somebody that shouldn't be giving away cigarettes.
So the toughest people survived.
The what?
The toughest people survived.
Always.
Yeah.
The one that's accustomed to eating everything and doing everything and not fighting orders and so forth, it usually is the more basic winner.
Okay. You also said that the reason you left Omori to go to that camp at the base of Mount Fuji was because of the firebomb raid on Tokyo. Do you remember the firebomb attack on Tokyo? Did you see Tokyo burn to the ground?
Did I what?
Did you see Tokyo burn to the ground?
No.
From where you were in Omori camp, did you see the bombing, the planes fly over?
Omori,
Yeah.
say it was on the waterfront between Tokyo and Kawasaki, which is the industrial town up there. We were on a sandbar. That's where the headquarters camp was, and this work camp. And from there, of course, you could see the fire go. Not only that, one day in I think in April, early April, they had a low-level firebombing of Tokyo, and it was a clear, beautiful sky. It was a beautiful day, clear. And do you know that between the 7 o'clock in the morning, by 9 o'clock, the sky had a haze on it, the fire, and as you know, their homes were mostly paper windows and of course wooden, and it actually had an eclipse of the sun. That's how much the firebombing and the papers and the sky was inundated with the fire residuals. It was fantastic.
he also said a couple of planes were shot down.
You could see at night that every once in a while you could see that if it was your turn to go to the, as you know, the latrine was away from the sleeping, and the idea is to have somebody going out there all the time. The Japanese didn't like it, but they couldn't basically stop you. So you had somebody out there watching the firefight, the bomb dropping and so forth, and you could see every once in a while. I've seen a couple of them that did their arch and apparently were hit.
Mm-hmm. And they brought a few of the pilots into your camp.
The camp we were in was being the headquarters camp, had a partition. The two of the two-story buildings, so that you could not communicate, and the pilots and the crew members that were picked up were moved into Omori, but you could not talk to them. They were in a separate half.
But you knew that the war.
They were there.
Yeah, and the war was near the end.
That's right.
Yeah.
But the biggest was when, as I told you, when on this autumn day of the festival, that it was a 3-day vacation, so to speak, that the emperor was going to talk, and he said where he was going to be nice to and save us from being beaten and cut down the war, and that of course was the biggest, and we then knew that something had happened, and they mentioned that there had been a terrific bomb, and then there was a second one, and then this speech, and we knew that, of course, we didn't know what this bomb was, and we were not acquainted then with atomic bombs or anything, but it really saved our lives. And I sure am thankful for our President Truman for making that decision. As you know, that last camp with the hole against the hillside was nothing but another way to destroy us in case there was an invasion.
Yeah. When the war did end, how did the Japanese treat you?
They basically didn't do anything. They just said that you're all free, and we're just waiting movement orders for you.
Yeah.
And then we could eat anything we wanted, and of course we had all these drop packages and so forth.
And the Japanese didn't feel shame or...
No, what was left with us were the favorable ones anyway. The couple of interpreters that weren't very nice was not to be seen.
Yeah. And when you flew between Japan and Okinawa, did you fly over Japan? Did you see much from your plane?
No, only from the Satsugi airport to
Naha.
There was well, in the first place, it was mostly over water from Atsugi down to Okinawa.
Yeah.
And so you couldn't see any part or any indication. Although the driving to Atsugi from the airport to the ship to where they did the first examination, they had a hospital ship there, and you could see the burned areas.
Yeah.
But we didn't get a chance to go out and look at anything.
Did you meet the woman, the woman air corps woman? Did they offer you chocolate or coffee or?
No, we didn't have any women. We never saw one.
Oh, okay. What about in Okinawa? Did you see much fighting?
No, in Okinawa I was just there, as I say, for 24 hours, and a renewed acquaintance with my friend the General, and of course Doolittle had flown to the States, and I slept on his bed, so had a beautiful dinner, first steak in years.
What plane did you fly on between Okinawa and Manila?
The C-54.
C-54. You were lucky.
Oh yeah. No, as I say, I was singled out immediately that they came in and took me out of the boat. As a matter of fact, the X-ray in charge of the hospital ship was a classmate of mine in medical school.
Yeah, oh dear.
So as I say, the minute we got repatriated, I was on Easy Street because I knew everybody except that I didn't get the promotions in prison camp.
Well, my granddad was on a B-24 between Okinawa and Manila.
Oh no. And B-24s are not any good, comfortable airplane.
No, he was standing. Do you have any hostility at all towards the Japanese since the war?
No, as I say, that was the old story. It's everything's fair in love and war. The point is some of the irritabilities didn't have to take place, like the Watanabe, as you said, the little SOB, but he lost 3 brothers in the war, you know, and he's fair-haired, but there's no excuse for retributions, you know.
Yeah. You told me that he actually visited the States. Watanabe visited the States.
Yeah. For 2 years I was on the waiting list to have it with him, but I never saw him.
Yeah. So.
And I don't. When Dr. Goad didn't tell me that he had come to visit him 10 years later, you know, then he got freed.
Yeah. Oh well.
As I say, I've never taken much time to use my experiences to have people feel sorry for me. Unfortunately, they know where I've been or so forth, because being a regular, I had nothing to complain about. After all, that was my game. So I think I was fortunate in being a doctor and doing my job, and they wanting to use me, you know, it helped me, so to speak. So my profession and and I was then I did quite a bit of ear, nose, and throat also. So, as I said, that helped me go through the marches and the sufferings, and the reason I was selected to end up at Omori. I mean, I didn't have anything to do with it, but apparently there must have been a plus sign on in my records to give me a chance.
There wasn't much disease at Omori. Was there any disease at Omori?
No, sir.
No.
No, by the time you got to Japan, you know, you were reamed or anything, there's no amoebas or anything. And you were getting a regular something to eat, nothing over. For instance, 1 tangerine a week, you know, is all you need for vitamin C, just like the old limey boats, you know.
Were you aware that the Japanese government was using Omori camp as a propaganda tool?
No.
No, didn't seem like. You never saw any cameras or.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know it was a headquarters, you know, of theirs, and the people in it had been monitored.
Do you consider yourself lucky to have been at Omori camp?
Yes. As I say, that it's same as going there on the last boat that didn't get sunk. I mean, with 1,500, 1,200, 1,150 people inside of a hole is bad enough. It's I'm here and you're here. You can imagine that. A place 4 times this size with 1,000 people in it. And the hole up here, if you can get to it, you know, you go to the benjo, which is a box over the edge of the ship. See? But of course, it's like everything else. And everything is hot, humid, and after all, August is no fun in this part of the world, even, you know.
Oh, do you remember the stripes, the 7 stripes? Remember the point system which you had in Manila to decide who was going home and who stayed?
There's no stripes or anything.
Okay.
All I was is had a little 2 captains.
Okay. But apparently anyone who was a POW could go home, but...
No.
Yeah. Okay.
No, there's no other identification.
Okay.
Just in Japan, where they gave me this ersatz blouse, you know, that like an officer has, it had my name on it in Japanese. In in the hieroglyphic, not the fancy one.
Yeah.
It's the Nippon Go. That's their writing language,
Oh, okay.
and it's da mo ru. It's 3 vowels.
Oh, hiragana.
Yeah.
Yeah, hiragana. Yeah. Excellent.
How you doing, buddy?
Yeah. Oh,
No fun, was it?
do you remember your POW number?
You what?
Your POW number.
I had no number.
Okay. You were just
Da mo ru.
Yeah. Excellent.
I was a bat boy.
Were you?
Well, your friend,
The
had
bird.
to have somebody to hit.
Okay.
I was his bat boy.
Ah, okay. Excellent. Okay.